I'll be glad. Let me just say I'll be glad to take any questions you have on the 10th Amendment before we get to the other topic that I know you're here for. If anyone has any questions.
What that other news might be about, but that may be the first time we saw a presidential announcement sort of couched in terms of the 10th Amendment.
And we have coming up in just a minute or two an exclusive Gingrich interview. TopLine begins right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News TopLine. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Jonathan Carl.
Every day at noon Eastern, we bring you the latest in politics. It's twitter.com/Rick Klein, twitter.com/John Carl. John, you're up on the Hill today. What do you know?
Well, it's morning in America, or is it? We have great news, or at least very good news, on the employment front. 192,000 jobs added in the month of February. The unemployment rate now down to 8.9%. Rick, even Republicans up here are saying that this is an encouraging sign, that this is welcome news. Of course, all those statements add a but, and the but is that recovery is not happening fast enough, but certainly welcome news, especially at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue.
That's right, and the time frame here could work out very well for the president. If you look at the time of year we're in right now, you could have a summer of recovery. Of course, we thought the White House wanted that to happen last year before the midterms, but I think President Obama would probably rather have that recovery before his re-election, if not at all. Next up today, it's details. House Speaker John Boehner is promising specific plans to address entitlements, but that doesn't necessarily mean there'll be detailed plans. If you got that, well, check out these quotes. This is what Speaker Boehner said over the weekend. Our budget, under the leadership of Budget Chairman Paul Ryan, will specifically deal with entitlement reform. And now in the Wall Street Journal today, after an interview, Mr. Boehner made it clear that Republicans are not themselves offering a detailed plan anytime soon. Thank you, John, for getting to the bottom of this. You got a spokesman for Mr. Boehner to talk about a little bit of this. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Rick, I can clarify all of this. I mean, really. This is Boehner's own spokesman to me this morning explained, quote, "Those are two different things. We can deal with it specifically without a detailed plan." You got that? We can have specifics without details. Crystal clear.
We got it figured out.
Really,
exactly.
but really, to be honest, what's going on here, Rick, is there is a deep division among Republican leaders about how far they should go on entitlement reform if Democrats aren't going with them. Paul Ryan wants to charge ahead with this and come out with a specific plan on Medicare reform at the very least. And a lot of other Republican leaders are saying that's crazy to do because the Democrats will beat the hell out of them for it. So there's a lot of division. We'll see where this comes out. Next up, the sun also rises. Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul, that is, we have learned now has trips planned next month to both Iowa and to New Hampshire. Of course, his father, Ron Paul, is a perennial presidential candidate. So now the question is, what's going on with Rand Paul? Any ideas, Rick?
Well, you heard it here first on TopLine, your Subway series a couple weeks ago, where he said, hey, maybe he will run for president, if not in 2012, maybe in 2016 or beyond. I think it actually is a safe bet that we'll sooner rather than later see him as a presidential candidate. Finally today, Murphy Brown, anyone? Mike Huckabee is picking a fight with Natalie Portman, of all people, the Oscar winner. Take a listen to this from a radio interview with Mike Huckabee yesterday.
People see a Natalie Portman or some other Hollywood starlet who boast of, hey, look, we're having children. We're not married, but we're having these children and they're doing just fine. It's unfortunate that we glorify and glamorize the idea of out-of-children wedlock.
Hollywood starlets getting under Mike Huckabee's knife right there. How about that?
Yeah, and of course, you're referring with the Murphy Brown to Dan Quayle when he took on the fictional television character Murphy Brown for having a child out of wedlock. And if you remember, Quayle was ridiculed by many Northeastern elites like you, Rick, back then. But this was something that made him something of a hero to social conservatives. So we'll see how this plays with Mike Huckabee.
For the record, I was about 14 years old back then. But we begin today's program with a special guest joining us from Atlanta. You mentioned a Gingrich exclusive. It's Jackie Gingrich Cushman, our good friend of the program and the author of a book that came out a couple months ago called The Essential American, looking back at some of the great speeches and documents in America's founding. And I want to start with the announcement that we heard yesterday, because I think there was some confusion around it. So maybe you can help clarify. Is your dad running for president? What's the latest thinking on that? Is he running?
Well, as Dad mentioned yesterday, he has a new website called Newt Explore 2012. And he's exploring with the American people where we're heading, thinking very hard about running for president, and really interested in hearing from the American people how we can work together to ensure American exceptionalism.
Okay, so I think it's safe to say that you know Newt Gingrich at least better than Rick or I. So, very simple question.
I think that's safe. I think that's safe to say. I think so. Yeah.
There are certain things that we are absolutely objective about here. So give us your candid assessment. Would he make a good president? And if so, why?
Oh, well, I think, first of all, you have to remember he's the man that balanced the budget, the federal budget. He reformed welfare. He balanced the budget for 4 years, paid off over $400 billion in debt, had the largest tax cut in 16 years, had the single largest capital gains tax cut. So if you're looking for someone that has the experience and has actually done things that have improved our country, clearly he has that record. And also, very importantly to me, he loves his country. He's a wonderful man, and I'm very proud that he's my father.
Can you? I want to ask one question about his record. He put a column out over the last weekend, kind of talking about the government shutdown, which is remembered now as being pretty bad for Republicans. He had a different take. What's your take, remembering that, watching that at close range, about how that affected the Republican Party?
Well, I remember it very well. In fact, I can remember going with him to the Sunday morning shows and pulling back out in the car and having people surround the car. So I remember that period very well. And I think a couple of things. I think he would admit that it was the right thing to do, but it could have been handled a little differently. And I'll give you a couple of examples. And this, to me, is part of why I love my dad so much, is because he does learn, he does grow, and he does change, which honestly gives me hope for myself. But one of the things is he had to show that he was tough. And clearly, he was tough. And in the end, the budget was balanced. So from that standpoint, it was incredibly successful. What wasn't successful is possibly he should have used a different tactic, which was, we want to keep the government going, but if we have to, it will get shut down. And I think some of the language could have been different. And honestly, he probably should have talked to the press a little less, which might make you wonder why I'm talking to you.
Wait a
but
minute.
you know, I'm a slow learner. But clearly, in the end, he got to where he needed to be. But as we all know, the process was not necessarily pretty.
So if he goes forward this time around with a presidential run, are we going to see? Are you going to be out there stumping for him? And what about the grandkids? You've got 2 children. Are they in favor of Grandpa running? Are we going to see them out there as well?
Well, like many in the country, we've been talking about it in our homes. You know, what's going to happen? And again, he's exploring this idea, and we'll find out in the next few weeks or few months. But my kids, they're great. They're great children. I'm so very blessed. My husband and I are blessed to have 2 great children. And they understand that sometimes what's best for you personally is not what's best for the country. And
right.
So far, they really want what's best for the country. And honestly, I feel very blessed to have them as children. They're very excited about going out and meeting new people. Thank goodness they have my husband's social skills, so they'll be very nice and polite and wonderful to travel with. But we're all very excited.
I want to ask you about a provocative piece you have up at townhall.com, where you frame the current Wisconsin budget debate and the debate in Washington as what you call liberty versus bondage. For a lot of folks, we're talking about abstractions, but we're also talking about just a budget fight here. What do you mean by that? What is the bondage option that you're referring to there?
Well, I think in the end, we're going to have a really strong conversation as a country in the next few years about where we're going and what we believe in. And you mentioned earlier in my book, The Essential American. And in that, there are 25 documents and speeches that every American should own, but it talks about American exceptionalism, which starts with the Declaration of Independence, right? We are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. I say this as background because I think where we're at as a country is we have this force. One is, if you want security, if you want to make sure everybody's okay, if you want a lot of government entitlement programs, if you want taxes, if you want entitlements, then you're going to have to give up some of your liberty. If you really want liberty, then you actually have to have risk. So I think we're at this position where we're really struggling as a nation, and where are we supposed to be? Now, I'm on the liberty side. I'm for the fact that when you actually tell people that they will always be okay and nothing will ever happen to them, that you actually, in some ways, enslave them because they can't imagine a better future without that help. So I think we're going to have an incredibly interesting dialogue as a nation of what's most important to us. Is it important to have everyone equal at the beginning, which is what we say in the Declaration of Independence, or are we determined in the end that everyone should be equal, which is much more the socialistic model?
All right, Jackie
Okay.
Gingrich Cushman. The book is Liberty. I'm sorry, the book is The Essential American. Your column was Liberty versus Dollars, The Essential American. Thanks for being here on TopLine. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.